tonight's episode of Let's Be Perfectly Queer with Randy Davis, we're joined by Loretta Fearman and Jill Shipley from Pflag, the local chapter here in Barrie, talking about all things to do with the queer kids and parents and how we can bring those two focuses together to bridge the gaps. Welcome to another episode of Let's Be Perfectly Queer with Randy Davis. On tonight's show, I've got some wonderful ladies to speak to us about Pflag, and more specifically Pflag here in Simcoe County. With me tonight, the wonderful Loretta Fearman and the delightful Jill Shipley. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
Thanks for being with me tonight. So let's just start off right from the get-go here and tell me about Pflag. What is Pflag for those who don't know?
Okay, so Pflag was started by a mom in the United States in the 70s. Her son came out and she was concerned and worried about his safety. And she and he marched in the Pride Parade in New York. I believe it was in New York in the 70s. So that's how it started. She decided that it was important for there to be a support group for parents and families, and that's how it started in the United States. It did grow into Canada, and it was originally Pflag, all capital letters,
right?
And that stood for Parents, Families, and Friends of Lesbians and Gays. Since they have changed the acronym to a lowercase acronym to be more inclusive.
Okay.
So Pflag is just a word now. It is no longer an acronym.
Okay, makes sense, makes sense.
Yeah.
And when did it start here locally? And who started it here locally?
Oh, we did.
Okay.
Oh, actually, no, sorry, that is incorrect. There was a Pflag years ago, and it disbanded. And then we started the Pflag 3 years ago.
Yep. We went
Is that
to,
all? Just 3 years ago?
Yeah.
Wow.
We went to a workshop for parents of LGBTQ2S plus youth, and there were so many questions, and it was so great to meet other parents and other families and grandparents that we didn't even really know each other at the time. We just looked at each other and went, this has to continue. We have to do something.
Right.
So we got together and decided we'd start a Pflag in Barrie Simcoe.
I had no idea it was only 3 years ago.
Yeah, it was really interesting because when we were sitting around the table, Jill and I just kind of looked at each other, and we knew each other because we were on the Pride board.
Okay.
So we knew each other from that, and we just thought, wow, you know what?
Mm-hmm.
There is such a huge need, and the trans community was growing so much in Barrie and Simcoe County that's where we saw there was a real need.
So is that where you're finding that the bulk of the parents that come to you and are looking to have advice and guidance and avail you of your services are their children are transitioning?
I would say that 99% of our families are parents of trans kids.
Wow.
Yes, but that, not to say that other parents shouldn't come, aren't welcome.
Right.
Parents of anyone under the queer umbrella have issues, have a process themselves of coming out,
right.
have all kinds of things that they're dealing with as well. And so they're welcome. We'd love to see you. Little plug there. If you'd like to come, if you're feeling you don't need to, wonderful, but it's just really nice to meet other people walking the same walk.
Now, speaking of folks walking the same walk, obviously you started this because you saw the need, and like most of us who get involved in organizations and in activism and advocacy, there's also lived experience that comes along with that. Can you share some of your stories with that and why Pflag and starting that group was so important to you?
So for me, it was interesting because when my son and daughter came out, and I did get their permission to talk about them, they struggled with coming out to us, which was really odd for me. And that was probably the strangest thing because we were very open in our family and accepting, and we talked about things. And at the time I was attending Northwest Barrie United Church, and in 2006 I was on the committee for same-sex marriage in our church, which passed. And so we were always open and talking about things.
Right.
And even that didn't kind of give them the courage to let us know. They've never really said why, but I think there's always that fear of rejection.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, for Michael and I, it was no problem. We didn't have any issues. And I do believe there was a Pflag around at that time, because I thought somebody had mentioned that I should join the Pflag, and I didn't really understand why, because I didn't think I needed to
Right.
have support. And then they said to me, but they might need you. And I thought about it, and I thought, well, that was a really powerful statement. So even parents that think that they don't need Pflag, there might be Pflag parents that need them.
Sure, sure.
So-
Now, are you like the typical parent of a queer youth? Did you know?
You know what? That's really interesting. I had no idea with my daughter, no idea. And I kind of suspected it with my son. There were some things that had happened in the past that
Right.
said yes, but I was the parent that didn't say, do you have a girlfriend?
Sure.
I would always say, so is there anyone special in your life? And he never caught on to letting me know.
Didn't realize that was a signal to open up?
Yeah. So I unfortunately had to ask him point blank, and probably not the best way to come out for youth, but we had a pretty good relationship, and I'm sure he would have appreciated being able to come out on his own, not being forced by his mother.
Mm-hmm.
But we all make mistakes, and that was probably one of the mistakes that I maybe could have learned from.
Right, right.
Yeah.
But that again is where it's important for you to, even if again you said you might not feel you need Pflag, those experiences and those stories will help
Right.
other parents, right?
Right.
So yeah, we make mistakes, we all do, but the fact that you're able to share that and help others avoid some of those pitfalls, that's where that mistake really serves you and your son very well. So
Yeah, and
I applaud you for that.
do that. We do that. That's why our group is a really good group, because it's a safe space
Right.
for parents to make mistakes and
Oh.
say things that they shouldn't say to their kids.
Yeah.
And we make that really clear that this is what happens
This
in our
is
meetings.
your
Stays
issue.
in our-
Playing
not
here.
their issue. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. And while I don't know your son well, I know your daughter more than I know your son, but I know both your children, and they're amazing, wonderful human beings. So
Thank you.
you haven't messed up too badly.
They're good
So
kids.
whereas Loretta could have been a gift to the other parents who might have needed her example, I am the poster child for don't do this.
Okay. So tell us a little
What
bit
not
about
to do. Back in the day, my daughter's now 32, and so 15, 18 years ago, I didn't have any LGBTQ people in my social circle that I knew of. It didn't even occur to me. I was completely blindsided when she came out to me.
Right.
And I said, well, she said, well, I'm dating my friend. And I said, why would you do that?
Yeah.
And when she told me and became a little more blunt about it, I said, oh no, only because my daughter's also disabled. And I thought, there we go. One more place
Right.
that you're going to be walking sort of against the norms of society. And it wasn't at all because she had confessed that, or said, or come out that she's gay. But I said the drastic, the dreaded oh no, and it took us a lot to come around again to being where we are today.
Right.
And I'm so thankful and so grateful, but I did it on my own, and I would have really enjoyed having, or it would have been great for our family and great for us to have some support. So
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult, certainly for the individual coming out, and I think that's one thing that we don't think about is how difficult it is for our family and those around us as well. I mean, I want to talk. It took me 38 years to come out of the closet, so I get that. And I know when I made the decision to come out, my concern wasn't so much about me. When I made the decision to come out, it was, this is happening. My only concern was how it was going to affect my children, because they were quite young at the time. And that's what I focused on. I did, I went to the library and took out books. This was before the internet was a big thing, so I couldn't Google and look for answers to things, but I wanted to make sure my coming out was going to have the least impact on my children. And what's great now is they really don't, I think, remember me as ever being anything but their gay dad. And they've been wonderful. We've been fortunate in all through their primary and schooling, and they both played minor hockey. Very, very few instances where anybody wasn't accepting. So a lot of that stress and stigma that we have about coming out is all self-stigma in many cases. I know it was for me, because the only thing my parents said to me was, "Are you happy?" And that's all my family said. As long as you're happy, we don't care who you happen to be in love with. So.
And that's
important.
The perfect situation.
Yeah, it took me 38 years to get there, though, is my point.
It did take Leah a long time to come out. She had a real struggle coming out. So it wasn't actually until fairly recent that she publicly came out.
Right.
So, yeah.
But I understand your reaction as a parent myself. Your first reaction, anytime your child tells you anything that is outside of the norms of society, is, okay, I need to protect my child.
Exactly.
You don't want your child ever to be in a situation where somebody has power over them. Right. And sometimes that information, especially when it's hidden, is powerful for some folks. It's just like living with HIV. The reason why I speak openly about it, because I don't want anybody to have that power to disclose that. That's my story to tell.
Right.
And coming out is also our own story to tell. So I think that's wonderful that you're willing to share those stories and the mistakes along the way too.
One of the things we actually do talk about at Pflag is that as much as it's a coming out for the youth, it's also parents have to come out. It's telling your maybe your aging parents, it's helping to pave the way for your child to tell who they want to come out to. It's also yourself telling your coworkers.
Siblings, you name it.
Yeah, my daughter will have a wife and that kind of thing, and not knowing how it's going to be taken. So
well, and it's one of those things that the coming out process isn't just a one-time thing.
No, you do it
ongoing,
over and
right?
over
Every
and
new
over
person
again.
you meet, every new situation you're in, when you're starting a new job. I know anytime after I came out, when I was starting a new job, I always in my head, okay, I've got to wait at least I'm through the probationary period, and then I'll let them know that I'm gay. Just that fear of, in knowing that in today's day and age, you cannot fire me just because of the fact that I happen to be gay, but it's still, absolutely.
It certainly does, and they can, without firing you, certainly make your life very difficult, which is why we're all working so hard to make it just like
now I know
you're right-handed or something.
Exactly. Privacy and all those things, but tell me a little bit about the parents and the kids that you're seeing as part of Pflag these days.
So I think we get a lot of new parents. The really nice thing about our group is we have a variety of different ages of kids, and we also have families that are at different places on the journey of acceptance and celebration. So that's probably really, really helpful, because we all help each other then, as opposed, it is truly a peer-to-peer support, where the other parents are helping each other, which is great. We just kind of sit there and take it all in. So I think Jill can probably talk to some of the more common.
What is a typical Pflag meeting
there is
look
a
like?
common.
There are some common threads that we've noticed and that were actually kind of surprising to us. When parents are new to their child's declaration and coming out, especially for trans parents, we have noticed quite an interesting trend that their child choosing a new name is often very, very hurtful to the parent. And the child, rightly so, is a new person. They feel they're new. They feel their new power. They feel they're where they should be in their new declared place. but the parent thought long and hard about that name, and they chose it. And it's a family name, and so it's helping the kids to say, listen, you've known this your whole life probably, and had time to think it through and adjust. Maybe your parents have only had 3 weeks.
Right.
So that closing that gap, but saying to the parent, but your hopes and dreams and the way that you saw your child's life unfolding is the way you saw your child's life unfolding. It's not your child's path necessarily. So it's just sort of brokering those 2 points of view and looking at things through a different lens, and it's really helpful. The other parents are fantastic about making it a celebration. Your child's changed their name. How about having a party? How about having a cake with their new name on it, or and that kind of thing. So that's been really interesting to us about names. It didn't occur to me that would be such an issue, but it really does seem to be.
Well, and along with the names, you've got the issue of pronouns as well then, right?
Yes,
Come along with
absolutely. That again is a very big issue to the youth or the people coming out. It makes a huge difference. It helps them have their self-confidence and truly be believed. And to parents, well, I've always called them that. Well, but you can't anymore.
Right.
So we have to let the parents know just how important it is to their child. And once we sort of do that, it's funny, the next meeting they say, oh, I really tried this month. I really tried, and it made such a difference.
Yeah.
And it's that parent then saying that in front of another newbie who makes the
realizes the impact
exactly,
of it. Yeah.
Exactly.
We also see most of our parents think it's a phase.
Oh yeah.
That is probably one of the most common things, is they believe it's a phase, and we know that it's not a phase. And I wouldn't say any of our families have
Had a phase.
had a phase. No, it is.
No.
And we try to help them understand that the struggle of being a trans youth is not easy. So it can't. It has to be taken seriously.
If you have had the guts and the courage to come out at school and to your parents as trans, or even somewhere under the queer umbrella, it's not a phase. You're going to end up somewhere there. What you call, what you sort of decide, and as you mature, and for example, my daughter now, 32 years down the road, is now pansexual. I shouldn't say is now, always was,
Sure.
but that's her definition as queer pansexual. But when she came out, all there was really was lesbian. So they will end up somewhere in there, within those parameters.
Sure,
yes.
because it used to be very black and white.
Yes, exactly.
And as did gender, right?
Yes,
and I think the fact that we're now actually able to view these things on a more of a spectrum, it allows us to hopefully one day not have to label anyone.
Really,
you know,
yeah.
That's I think is the ultimate goal.
Mm-hmm.
But I certainly, as a parent myself, I can understand that reluctance to let go when we have our children. I've mapped out in my head from the day my kids were conceived what their ideal life in my eyes would look like.
Exactly.
I'm sure my parents did the same when I was born. I'm quite certain the path I've chosen is not the path that they would have chosen for me. But we have to remember that it's our path. And I think what's dangerous about a parent not allowing their child to walk their own path is, and I'm sure you must see this, and I hate to even bring up the subject because it's going to make me tear up, but let's face it, if you don't let your child walk their path, be there to hold their hand and help them through that path, but they've got to mark that journey themselves. You risk losing your child, and I don't mean just losing your child as no longer being part of your life, but losing your child as that child committing suicide, because that is a very real danger, especially when we're talking about queer youth and in particular trans youth. And how do you navigate those issues at Pflag?
Well,
That's so tricky. We try to make parents aware of the stats, and there are good, up-to-date, current Canadian statistics about just how many LGBTQ youth contemplate suicide. Do you remember off the top of your head? It's about 4 times the rate of regular
Absolutely.
suicide rates. And so we talk about that, but then we also talk about, do you really want to have, and about the support, do you really want to have no relationship with your child ever? That you need to get in the canoe and pick up an oar or a paddle and get going in the same direction. And Loretta's far better at being diplomatic and gentle than I am, and so I sort of let her steer that conversation. But back to your original thought, one meeting we had, we aren't psychologists. All we can do is just hug you, hold your hand, and listen. But I'll never forget one meeting about a year and a half ago. We had 3 parents out, and all 3 children of those parents were on suicide watch at RVH. And so it's true. We're not just doomsayers. It happens, and we need to be watching how we're behaving in every day, how younger siblings are watching us as parents, and it can't be overstated how important it is, I feel.
Yeah, because I think, I again, don't know the specifics of the statistics, but certainly it's been shown that for trans youth in particular, if they have that support from their parents right from the beginning, the likelihood of them going down that dark path is greatly diminished.
Oh, greatly.
And to not be able to, I mean, I can't even comprehend the idea of not supporting my child around those things. You know what? Gay, straight, trans, cisgender, whatever you want to be, as long as you're here with me and we still have a relationship,
and
that's really all that
happy?
matters in
Yes,
the end,
yes,
right? Yeah,
absolutely.
And are you happy? Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
I feel like you have something
Go ahead
more to
and
say.
say.
So say it.
No, because we're preaching to the choir, right?
Yes.
It's not always that easy for some parents to be that supportive, and that's what we're there for. That's what we're here for. So we want to make sure that we're here to support those parents and their kids, and so that's what we do at our meetings. So we all start together at our meetings, parents and youth, and then we kind of have a check-in. Then we separate so that, and I go off with the youth, and then they get to talk about whatever they want to talk about. They get to ask questions. They have their safe space. And Jill stays in with the parents, and then that gives them their safe space. So Jill probably is more aware of what's going on with the parents, whereas I'm more aware of what's going on with the kids. I cannot share what we talk about because I have given them my word that I wouldn't. And if any parents are watching, I don't want to out them. So so we have a safe space at the Gilbert Center, and it's been really good. It's been really good.
I think so. We get the feedback we get are, I don't think I could have done this journey without you, and that sort of thing. And it's really heartwarming. I really don't want any parent to have to walk the walk I walked. There was no information then. Right. I wanted to be supportive, had no idea how. There was not even any literature, nothing. There was nothing, I don't think, like the Gilbert Center supporting parents. And so I'm really grateful for this opportunity. One of the reasons we do split the groups is because I taught school for many years, and I discovered that an interview with just the parents was very different, and rightly so, than an interview where the child was present.
Right.
And sometimes there are things that need to be said that you don't want your child to hear, or vice versa. So we just thought that in order to create a safe space for both a clientele, we split them up a little bit for the meeting.
Well, and I would hope that doing that split when the child and those parents come back together after the meeting on the drive home, that probably elicits some conversation that might not have happened
Oh,
otherwise, right?
Definitely.
So,
We hear that, especially from one mom.
right?
The drive home.
Yeah. So you may not be disclosing to each other what's going on, but as long as the families
Yes.
are creating that environment where they feel safe to bring up those subjects, I think that's wonderful.
That's the whole point. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. Just on a side note, is there any sort of organization that sort of does the flip? So for gay parents who have children who identify
I
as
was
straight?
thinking about that when you said
Yeah.
Yes.
So that there isn't. So when you came out and your kids didn't know how to deal, there wasn't really anything for them.
And there still isn't, I guess,
no, not that I know of.
which is interesting.
Yeah, and I imagine it's the same for parents that come out as trans. Actually, at the Pride Festival this summer, we had a family come up to us, and their parent is trans, and just recently came out as trans, and they were looking for support for their child because they're
Yeah.
little. They're little, and they needed to understand what was going on. Yeah, so I don't want to get too much into their details, but
Right.
yeah, it would be great if they were actually looking for that kind of support,
That's
and there was
interesting.
nothing we could offer them. I mean, they're welcome to come to our group,
Oh, absolutely. Come
but
ahead.
I'm not sure that that's what they're gonna
not-
get what they need.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but as you say, coming to the group and sharing their story, they might have somebody else at the group that's got a similar story that you're not aware of too.
Right.
So it's
And if I
Exactly.
can just say something really quickly
Absolutely.
about PFLAG as well. Our PFLAG meetings are once a month. You are not committed to coming to every month. You can come when you want. If you've had enough and you feel like you're doing well enough on your journey, you don't have to come back. You can whenever you want. It's not, you're not committed to
Right.
once
Open
a
door
month.
policy.
Yeah.
how many folks do you normally have at a meeting?
Anywhere from maybe just 3 to.
I think we had 22 one
Yeah.
night.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow,
That was a good meeting.
It was.
bet.
It was lots of fun.
I bet.
Oh, shucks, I just forgot what I was going to say. Oh, about parents flowing in and out of our meetings as they feel they need support. It's very interesting. Often the meeting just before school starts is larger.
Sure.
Because that's where your child comes smack up against society in a big way, and that needs a little unpacking and some chat. Sometimes when another time is university.
So those
And
milestone
social-
Yeah,
events.
those
Special
milestone
occasions.
events, yes.
Yeah.
And graduations, that sort of thing.
Great, great. All right. Well, I think our time is limited, unfortunately. I really appreciate you coming out and educating myself and the viewers around Pflag. I'm sorry.
Thank you for
Pflag. I had to do that. I just had to.
welcome.
Inside joke, folks. But again, no. I'm seriously. I really appreciate it. I'm grateful for your time this evening to talk to me about Pflag and what you folks are doing here locally for the queer community. It is absolutely a necessity, and I think we need to talk more about that reverse Pflag group and see
Yeah.
what can come of that.
Interesting.
Yeah. Thank you again, Loretta. Always a pleasure. Jill, thank you again. Appreciate it very much. That's it for another edition of Let's Be Perfectly Queer with Randy Davis. Tune in again next week.